Well, welcome. Uh, a lot of thanks for your interest on checking this topic. It's a very, very important and hot topic in organizations. I call it from bad boss to team builder because it's a common problem in organizations that the retention rates are not as good as they would like, and there is a lot of money that goes out on looking for people and recruiting again and onboarding and training and all the things that we need to do with new employees. So let me start with the hard truth here. Well, my name is Guillermo Mendoza, and I'm a global speaker, executive coach in impact coaching solutions. We do a lot of leadership development programs, assessments, but we also are trainers for international coaching community. So we train professionals to become professional coaches, and we have a coaching certification training and an executive coaching specialty. But let's start with a statistic that is the hard truth that should concern every leader and HR professional, and is that 75% of employees leave or consider leaving their job not because of the payment, not because of the benefits, not because of the office or physical space, is because of bad managers. And this is shocking, but every year that the HR people doing research do studies about this, the answer always came the same. The main reason to leave a job is a bad boss. So if we take a moment to let this sink in, and I usually like to run an exercise, I'm going to ask you to participate in the chat, is think about the worst experience that you have had with a manager, the worst boss that you have had, and just write in the chat some of the words that come to mind on what was that experience, what was the behavior that you didn't like from that manager or that boss that either made your life difficult or even maybe make you leave that job or change department or make some decisions because you were really suffering through that experience. So what are some of the words that come to mind when you describe that? And some of the ones that I have here are micromanaging. Crystal is telling us micromanaging, lack of trust in my abilities. And when I have run this exercise, sometimes I get other words like controlling, dismissive, unpredictable, ego driven. And I want you to notice something important. None of these words describe a lack of intelligence in that manager. They describe how that person felt working with that person. What was the experience of working with a person that was creating some negative emotions or maybe triggering some feelings because of that bad experience. So I want to be very clear about something before we go any further. These managers are not bad people. They are not intentionally trying to make our life difficult. They are not villains. They care, they work hard, they want to succeed in their positions, they want their teams to succeed, they want to deliver results. But the problem is that the good intentions not necessarily equal their good leadership. They don't have the good leadership impact. And I want to share with you a real story. When we were promoting this presentation, I got a comment in one of my posts of someone that says, once my manager changed, every day became harder. When I resigned, multiple department heads asked me to stay, but they understood when I said I couldn't work under him anymore. It took 2 years to replace me. So when that person wrote that comment in my post, I said, well, this confirms the whole story about how not only is difficult to work for a bad boss, but also what is the impact in the organization. Like in this case, this lady was saying, it took 2 years to replace me. And when other departments and peers were asking me to stay, I couldn't stand that anymore. I had to move. And sometimes it's not yelling, not a scandals, not a legal action, just a slow, expensive erosion. That's why the term quiet quitters started a few years ago. Quiet quitters, people that say, okay, yeah, just let him be, let her be. I will do my job and go home as soon as possible, and that's it. And that's the problem that it creates. Now, this again is not bad intentions from the managers, but it's poor leadership impact and a massive, massive hidden cost. Because organizations sometimes, people in HR sometimes are not taking the time because it's is not a priority and is time consuming to calculate, okay, what is the cost of someone leaving? The thing that we usually do is an exit interview. Let's ask the person what happened. Just that. But we don't calculate what those 2 years replacing that person cost the organization in terms of recruiting, selecting, onboarding, that person taking the first year to understand the role again. All those things are a lot of money. And that's what I want to stress in this session, because sometimes we are not calculating that. And that's what organizations need to realize to make decisions on how they are training and developing leaders in their organizations. So the real root of the problem is that we promote people in management because they are good individual contributors. That's the key problem. And when I speak at the Gold Coast Symposium for Human Resources here in Houston and in HR conferences, I always tell HR people, please, just one big important change that you can do in your organization is stop training managers in management skills. Stop training managers in management skills. And sounds weird. Why? Why stopping training managers in management skills? Start training people that are not managers yet in management skills, because that's the big mistake. I think it's the only field in the knowledge in schools and universities and industries where we do it upside down. Usually we get a theory, we get a career, we get the knowledge, we get some training, and then we exercise that training by putting that knowledge into action, doing things. But management in organizations is the only place where we do it upside down. First, send that person to management, and then we realize, oh, he doesn't know how to do it. Let's send him to a management training because he has no idea how to do it. So we do it backwards, and I don't know why we continue doing it backwards. We put them as managers, and we suddenly expect that they will motivate humans, they will manage emotions, they will build trust, they will handle conflict with zero training. So these people is under this pressure, and then they don't rise to their potential. They fall back to their conditioning, and their conditioning is, well, I was placed here because I am the best, because I have a lot of knowledge, and now my job is to make sure that everyone follows my instructions and do as I said and work hard. So under stress, that starts revealing the lack of confidence that they have in leadership because they haven't been leaders. So they start having the behaviors that are not helping and being maybe too authoritarian, maybe just pushing people, giving solutions instead of developing people, thinking that because I am the expert, I provide all the answers. And a lot of mistakes that they do as leaders because of this situation. So again, if you are going to do one thing, just start training not managers in management skills. That's something very important to start doing. Now, leadership, I always insist in all the work that I do with my coaching and leadership training and in impact coaching solutions, we use three pillars. We use neuroscience, we use emotional intelligence, and we use coaching. And I stress a lot the fact that neuroscience is an important component because that's how leadership is based. It's based on understanding how people's brain reacts to language, to actions, and how my own brain reacts to language and actions. So leadership does not happen in job descriptions, it happens in the brain. And that is where neuroscience changes the entire conversation. So every interaction you have as a leader is sending a signal. Am I safe here or not? And the brain makes a decision before logic kicks in. With all the millions of years of our brain evolution, we are still 82% an animal brain. So what happens is that we react first, protecting ourselves. I was in a neuroscience conference with the Neuro Leadership Institute. I really like the metaphor that they use. It's like when you are walking in nature, and if there is a little animal, a rabbit or any kind of animal there, the first thing that they are going to do when they see you is they are going to freeze. And that freezing is maybe this idea of maybe they didn't see me. And then it's a very fast animal brain analysis. Is this thing bigger than me? So I am going to be eaten here if I stay here? Or is this thing smaller than me and maybe it's my food? If this thing is bigger than me, then I need to run as fast as possible. And that's the flight response. If this thing is smaller than me, maybe it's my next lunch. So I need to fight for it. And that's the fight response. So the flight fight response is run away or attack. But what's funny is that this exact same behavior is happening in the meeting rooms, in our conference rooms in the organizations. If I am in a meeting and suddenly someone attacks me saying, "Oh, that's a crazy idea. We cannot do that," then my first reaction is to freeze. Like maybe the others didn't notice that I am under attack here or that I was insulted here. Then the next reaction is like, okay, is this person bigger than me? Meaning, is this my manager? So then is my fly response. And since it's not socially acceptable that I stand up and run away from the meeting room, I just stay there and I said, okay. And and then I am going to like just accumulate the stress inside me. But if this person is if he's bigger than me, probably it's going to say we are going to do it like that. I don't care that you think that's a stupid idea. We will do it like that. But if he's reporting to me, maybe he's going to stay quiet and accumulate stress. So the same reactions that the animal is doing in nature, we are doing it in the meeting rooms because our brain is protecting us. It's not about being eaten, but it's about the status, credibility, what they think about me, how do I look. All those things are concerns that our brain are protecting all day long. So in that's why I love to talk about neuroscience and include it in our leadership development programs because it's about helping people understand how your brain is reacting when you feel under attack, how your people is reacting when they feel under attack, and what are the little adjustments that you can make to language or to actions so you don't create the flight or fight response. Because this is another funny thing that I learned from neuroscience. When and actually, that's the reason why you get sleepy after lunch or after dinner, because the blood from your brain goes to the digestive system to digest, and you get a little sleepy. Well, that proves that the brain needs blood to work and to work efficiently. When I am in the fly or fight response, the blood goes to my arms and to my legs, because that's where I need my blood to either run away or attack. So I have less blood in the brain. So I tell leaders, when you threaten people, either with your words or with your actions, you have immediately a less intelligent person in front of you because the blood is not in the brain. The blood is in the arms or in the legs. So if we understand these dynamics, we can start making important changes in our leadership and how we treat people and how we adjust some things that are important. So today I want to give you three solutions that you can immediately apply to start working on this. Solution, and we are going to get into a little detail with them, but I want to mention them now. Solution number one is understanding the brain and the effects of threatening language. Solution number two is the asking permission technique. And solution number three is the concept of feed forward. That's what we are covering today. So let's start with the first one. The first one is that if we teach leaders in organizations to understand better how the brain reacts and understand that we have this reaction to protect our status, our image, then we are going to notice it and do something about it and act in a different way. I always like to use this example of conversation with my wife. In couples, this happens a lot. When one, either the husband or the wife, attacks the other by saying, "Hey, you didn't do this, and that I asked you to do," the other person feels under attack, but they don't notice. It's the brain feeling the attack, the animal brain feeling the attack. They don't notice. And the immediate reaction is, well, let me tell you what you didn't do the other day for me. And we are going to counterattack. We are going to defend ourselves by attacking. That's the normal reaction that we have in these conversations. But if we know more about neuroscience and understand better the brain, then we can have this quality of being the observer and noticing that when my wife said that, I am feeling under attack. And I can say, oh, I'm feeling under attack. My brain wants to now tell her what she didn't do for me. But brain, we don't need to counterattack. I understand you're protecting me, but it's not needed. I can say, oh, I'm sorry I didn't do that. I'm sorry how you feel. And what can we do to fix that? it's going to be a very different conversation. But it depends on how I am trained on observing my thoughts and reactions and make decisions based on that. So when the brain perceives a threat, the amygdala takes over. Threat doesn't mean danger, it means judgment, uncertainty, loss of control, shame. So when we as leaders use phrases like, why didn't you? Or you should have done this and that, or this is unacceptable, we are immediately activating the threat response in the other person. And when that happens, we said blood leaves the brain. And sometimes leaders don't realize that even things that doesn't sound like that dangerous, like bosses asking an employee, like, could you come to my office, please? I always ask in my presentations, people in the audience, how, how do you feel when your boss told you, could you come to my office, please? And the answers are always, I made a mistake, or what did I miss, or they are firing me, or what happened. But I never got an answer of someone saying, I got a promotion, thank you, I'm going to my boss office, because the brain goes to the negative, not to the positive. And as leaders, we are not noticing that we are creating that attack, and then creativity drops, learning shuts down, defensiveness increases. So the prefrontal cortex, which is the cognitive part of our brain, the more developed human part of our brain that thinks and is responsible for planning and problem solving, is going offline when we are under attack. And that's the main problem. And most managers unknowingly are triggering these all day long in their employees. Not because they are bad leaders, not because they have bad intentions, not because they want to ruin your day. It's because they were never taught how the brain actually works. So solution number one is spend time teaching your leaders or learning how is the brain behavior. And that is going to be very, very important in your leadership development programs. Solution number two is a very simple adjustment in language that is going to take leaders to the next level. Instead of saying, could you come to my office, please? Which is creating uncertainty and concern and feeling attacked, then I can use the asking permission technique. And the asking permission technique is very simple. Is just asking, hey, is this a good moment to review the sales report? And when I am doing that, I am getting rid of the uncertainty. It's not about firing you, it's not about promoting you, it's about reviewing the sales report. And also, I am giving you an out. Is this a good moment? You can say, hey, I haven't finished. Can we check that tomorrow? Or let me finish this and I will go to your office. So you have an out and you don't have uncertainty. So you are not under attack. The animal response is not going to be triggered. And that is a very simple technique to teach leaders, the asking permission technique, because that way they are not using threatening language. So if we compare to statements when we tell people something like, you need to do this differently, it's an attack, versus, would you be open to exploring a different approach here? Then it's a more inviting question. It's less aggressive. So neurological, this is going to land very different. The first one triggers defensiveness and threat. The second one creates more curiosity, safety. So this is important, and it's important that leaders realize that asking permission doesn't weaken my authority. It actually strengthens engagement. So this one technique alone is dramatically going to reduce resistance and reactivates thinking. And it's very, very easy to teach and very easy to implement. But as I said in some of my posts in LinkedIn, the problem is that it's not a workshop teaching them, it's then creating the repetition environment so they convince their brains that this is the new way of doing it. And they create a new habit and establish a new best practice. And that takes time. That's not just attending a workshop. Now, the third solution that I want to give you today is the one on the concept of feed forward. The same way that human resources have studied for many years that the main reason to leave a job is bad bosses, they have also studied for many years that feedback is not working. Feedback is one of the worst things that we do in organizations. Why? Because we are not managing it in the right way. traditional feedback is always focusing on the past. Studies show that the performance review period is the most stressing period for employees, because that's when I have to think and write down my case on why you need to rate me high and give me my promotion and my new salary. And you, as my manager, have the job to prove me wrong and tell me, well, you are good, but not that good. These are all the things that you didn't reach. So you are in a different level. Of course, that is stressing. It's like preparing for a fight. It's one of the worst moments in organizations for people. And the problem is that it's working about reviewing the past. And when we review the past with feedback, we are attacking people. Sometimes we say in organizations, well, don't take it personally. Of course, I'm going to take it personal. You are talking about me, a past behavior that I did wrong, or a comment that I did wrong, and you are correcting me on that. Of course, it's personal. So when I feel that this is personal and again feel under attack, feedback is going to create excuses, justifications, emotional withdrawal, explanations of why the problem is that the other department didn't give me that, or that the other person didn't mention such and such. So I'm going to look for where to move the guilt or the blame to. And that doesn't work. Now, the concept of feed forward is switching this in a radical way, is thinking like, okay, let's have a conversation about how we can do it different in the future. The difference with feed forward is that we are going to focus in the future. So it invites solutions. It's not about reviewing your past mistakes. It's about let's discuss new, different ways of doing it better in the future. So it's going to, instead of create a threat response, it's going to activate the prefrontal cortex. Instead of you handled that badly, we are asking next time, what would you try differently to have a different result with that? And the beauty of feed forward is that since the future hasn't happened yet, now it really is not personal. I haven't made a mistake yet because we are talking about the future. So you are not attacking me. It's potential. It's something that we can do in the previous bad way or in the new way that we are exploring. But the mistake hasn't happened yet. So that creates a different dynamic in the brain and a different way of working. So same issue, but completely different brain response. I was very lucky, for example, when I joined Microsoft back in the 90s, and I remember my first day at the job that my manager said, those were the golden years of Microsoft, growing like crazy and fast speed moving. And he said, welcome to the company. And by the way, we allow people to make mistakes here. That was a great invitation for my brain. Is like, don't worry about making mistakes. Make mistakes. We encourage mistakes. And he followed that just with one little comment. The only rule is don't make the same mistake twice. But that was great advice. It's opening the brain for creativity, for trying an error, for thinking out of the box, for a lot of stuff without the concern of my repercussions for a mistake. And also it's inviting me to analyze when that happens to never repeat it and change something so the same mistake doesn't happen twice. Now, at the end of this presentation, if you're here or if you are watching the recording, we are going to give you a code to download one guide that we created to implement feed forward in organizations. And also the other thing that you are going to find in that guide is not only about moving the conversations to the future, but also creating a culture in your teams about asking for feedback. When you ask for feedback, you ask for the feedback that you need. When you receive feedback that the other person wants to give you, not the one that you need. And that's a critical difference. If my manager comes and tell me, can I give you some feedback? Again, my brain is like, oh, here it comes. Okay, tell me. No, it's like, what happened? And that person is going to tell me the things that were important for him. So my boss is going to say, you know what, in your presentation yesterday, I think the slides were really crowded, and I think that you need to simplify this, and that. Okay, that was the feedback. But that was not my main concern. As the presenter yesterday, my main concern was if I was having the right voice variations to deliver in an engaging way. So if I have a culture for asking for feedback, instead of my manager coming and telling me that my slides were crowded, I am the one going to my manager and saying, "Hey, can I ask you for some feedback about my presentation yesterday? I'm concerned about my voice variations and keeping the audience engaged. What do you think about that?" So I'm getting feedback on the things that are important for me. So creating in your team or in your teams a culture where you are going to ask for feedback when you need it and about what you need it is much better than the feedback going down and providing feedback on the things that are important for the other person. So that's another important good thing of this concept of feed forward. Now, we know that knowing all those things and attending a workshop where this is explained or coming to this masterclass is not going to create change behavior. So the insights are great, and sometimes we take notes. Oh, that was a great idea. I never thought about that. And we think about these cool things. But the reason your leaders are not changing is, and the reason most leadership trainings are failing, is because the insights feel powerful at the moment, but then they fade. People sometimes leave workshops inspired with good notes in their notebooks, but then they go back to the day to day, the pressure returns, and their old habits protecting themselves resurface. Why? Because the brain defaults to the familiar neural pathways. So another important concept that I love about neuroscience is the concept of neuroplasticity. In the past, they thought that our brain evolved until we had our 21 years old and then it didn't evolve anymore. Today we know that your brain keeps switching connections all the time as we grow and develop all the time until we die. The brain continue reconfiguring connections and doing things, and that's what is called neuroplasticity. And I love that concept because when we think about how do I make the workshops on leadership work in a way that they create real change in my leaders, it's about neuroplasticity. It's about creating new neural connections, new pathways in the brain. And the metaphor that I love about that, again related with nature, I love nature, is if you go to a park and you have a trail for do maybe some hiking, some trekking, that that path is open. You have less vegetation, is clearly marked. Everyone is walking along that path. If you want to take a different route, there is no path. You have to go through vegetation, and you maybe need to start cutting some trees or do something to create that new path. In the brain is the same. We have paths that are already established. Those are our ways of doing things. And we keep repeating the same time after time after time. That's the known route that we always take. If we want to create change in us, in leaders, we need to start creating new paths. And the way to create new paths is to convince our brain that it's a new way to do things. And the key for that is repetition. The only way, I remember when I got certified as a coach, that my teacher said there are no voids in the universe. You cannot just get rid of a bad habit. You need to replace it with a good habit. So if I just cannot get rid of that pathway, I need to replace it with another route. And the way to replace it is to start cutting the trees, start walking here and telling everybody, come with me this route. And as I am creating that new route, and maybe we put a sign on the other one that is out of order, that is out of use, then the vegetation will start growing in the old one, and we will start clearing the new one, and we have now a new pathway. And that's neuroplasticity in the brain. When we create with executive coaching, with systems, with we call them structures that trigger behaviors, that trigger language, when we start creating all that repetition, we finally convince the brain, oh, okay, this is the new way of doing things. And we forget about the old way of doing things. But that comes with repetition. I I had to do it myself. I had a very bad habit because I am a D style in the disk system, and I am all to results and time is gold and let's go to the point. I had the bad habit that every time that I write an email, right, that I write in a chat, I ask for what I need directly, not even hello. And I know that for people my style, that is great. For other styles, it's like, how rude. Not even how you doing today? Good morning, something. So I needed to change that behavior. So I use a structure, we call it in coaching. I create a post-it that said, say hi first, and I stick it in my screen. So every time that I needed to write an email or words in a chat or whatever, I could see my post-it, say hi first, so I can go back and say, hey, hello, how are you doing today? Or I hope you're doing well. And then my question, then my point. And I had that post-it for a long time in my screen. Today, I don't have it anymore, but now I remember that I need to say hi first, or at least I remember to go back to the beginning of the message and say, hey, how are you? Or I hope you're doing well. So I have a new behavior. But this comes from repetition. That's why leadership development is not only teaching, it's teaching and then creating the systems to create new behaviors, to create new language, to create new ways of doing things. And that's going to be hard for leaders. I was coaching a CEO in a company that had the bad habit of getting in the mornings to his office, straight ahead all the cubicles down to his private, not even saying good morning, and start working. And when we were having this executive coaching process, he said, well, I would like to connect more with people, but I know that my big mistakes is that I don't even say hi in the morning. I go straight to my office. So maybe one action is that I could start taking it slower and in the morning is stopping some cubicles and shake some hands and saying good morning. And I said, great idea. That sounds great. But then he said, no, 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 no. But then they will say, what happened? That's not my boss. That wouldn't be me. They are going to be surprised with my behavior. That wouldn't be me. And as a coach, I said, great, exactly. That's what we want. We don't want you to be you. We want you to be your new version. We want you to be your upgrade, your new version, a better version of yourself. So change feels uncomfortable for leaders because they are going to do adjustments in language or behaviors that are out of the comfort zone. And that's something that they need to overcome, thinking, well, I'm working on a new version of myself. And that is going to create repetition. And with repetition, my brain will understand this is the new way of doing things. And with repetition, people understand that this is not an alien that replaced my boss. This is my new version of my boss. And people understand that I can peel off the label that I put in this person of being zero social, and can place the new label of amicable. So all that is going to happen with repetition and new behaviors. And it needs to happen that way. When I coach executives and leaders in organizations, I actually tell them, well, you have three ways of working your leadership development, three ways of work in your change. The first one, which I don't recommend, I call it the secret change. So you come to your coaching sessions, you learn about the changes you need to do, you start doing them, but you don't tell a soul. You don't tell anyone. If I go and make a survey with those people, is he changing? Is she changing? They are going to say, nah, it's the same. They are not going to even notice. Even when you're feeling that you are exaggerating and that you are a new person, they are not going to notice. That's the secret way. Number one, I don't recommend it. Number two is the one where you align your goals with your manager, you share with your manager what you're working with, you are working in your leadership goals, you share that with your team, you tell them, I'm working on listening better, I'm working on not interrupting. And then you start doing your changes in your behavior and your language. And with that, and exaggerating your behaviors, if I go and do the survey again, they will say, it's changing a little, just a little. Even when you think that you're changing a lot, they are noticed just a little. So that is good one, but it's not the best. The one that I recommend is the third one. And the third one is become your best marketing agent for your change. So not only you told your manager, not only you told your people, but now every time that you exercise the new behavior, you brag about it. So when you are in the next meeting, you say, okay, guys, the previous me would have interrupted with this, but I am changing. I'm creating a new version of me here. So keep telling me. I want to hear the whole story before interrupting you. And if I do that every time that I exercise the new language or the new behavior, when I do the survey, is he changing? People are going to say, oh, of course, every time that he does it, he's bragging about being a new person, about not interrupting, about acting in a different way. That is going to create a faster change of perceptions. Because this is the thing. Also, when I start the coaching processes with my clients, I tell them sometimes leadership development is not about you getting new skills or practicing them and getting better at them. Sometimes it's about your audiences getting the right perception about your leadership. Sometimes you have the right skill, but you are not using it. Another example that I use to understand this better. I have a client that when we do an EQ360 survey that I like to use at the beginning of my processes, is an inventory on 15 different emotional skills. This person was rated super high in empathy from the direct reports and super low in empathy from the manager, like if they were two different persons. And when I was coaching this leader, I said, well, what happened here? You got these super high ratings here and this low rating here. What's going on? Well, what happened is that his behavior was when people was coming with problems, he was very empathetic. He was like, I'm sorry that that happened. How can I help you? Do you want to take the afternoon off? How do I help you to solve this? I'm really sorry that you are experiencing this problem. He was very empathetic. But then he turned around and in the meetings with the manager, he was like, these guys are lazy. They are always making excuses to avoid work. They are always coming up with stories. So the perception for the manager is zero empathy. You are not empathetic at all. So I tell my leaders sometimes it's not about a behavior that you don't have. You have it, but you are not showing it in the same way to all your audiences. So they are putting you different labels. And you need to be more authentic and transparent and try to exercise the same language and behavior with people in a way that you create a more standard perception of your leadership and that all of them refer to you as the same person. And that again comes with those repetitions, with those techniques that I just shared with you. So all these are important steps in leadership development. So what we have found that actually creates this lasting change is combining this understanding of neuroscience principles also with structures, we call them reminders or triggers, also with adjustments in language, adjustments in behavior, and a lot of repetition over time that is going to create the new habits. So on neuroscience is understanding the brain. Language is choosing your words intentionally. Structures is triggers for repeatable behaviors. And then time to consistency over intensity. This is how leaders stop guessing and they start leading with precision. Not by trying harder, but by leading smarter. Now, before we move on, I want to give you something practical because insight without application doesn't change behavior. So one of the most common frustrations I hear from leaders is like, well, this makes sense, it sounds great, but how do I actually use it with my team? And that's exactly why we created this presentation and some of the things that we mentioned, like this feed forward implementation guide that we are going to offer you at the end of the presentation. Many of you have heard of the concept of feed forward. It was originally popularized by Marshall Goldsmith, a great author and coach. And what we have done at Impact Coaching Solutions is that we took that powerful idea and we integrated it with neuroscience. So leaders don't just know what to do, but they understand why it works and how to apply it under the real pressure of the job. So the guide that you are about to receive is not only theory, it's brain friendly, it's a step-by-step way on how to replace the feedback conversations that are threatening and don't work and create defensiveness with feed-forward conversations that create more ownership. And inside the guide, you are going to find a clear explanation of why feedback often fails at the brain level, exactly how to give feed forward in a couple of minutes, what to say, what not to say, real examples that you can use immediately, and a step-by-step process for implementing feed forward with your team. I want you to think about this guide not about something that you are going to just read and learn and file away, but more like a leadership operating manual. So you can use it in your next one-on-one. You can use it after your next presentation. You can use it before your next difficult conversation or as practice with your team. It's a daily tool. And one important thing, you don't need to use the whole thing, but if you apply just one or two feed forward conversations consistently, you are going to start seeing in people less resistance, better thinking, stronger accountability, and a very different energy in your team. The the other thing that I want to share with you, and you can use this QR code to get to my calendar link, is for people attending today or people checking the recording, I have some limited spots for what we call a 30-minute strategy conversation. And it's just no obligation, no sales. It's just like understanding what are your challenges in leadership development in your organization and see what things can help you. And this could be recommending you a book, or this could be recommending you one of our programs. But it's about having that conversation to understand what are the realities in your organization. And for some of you, maybe the master class is enough. For others, it's like, okay, I like this, but how do I apply it in my managers? How do I change the culture? How do I reduce my turnover numbers? So this session is for that, is to look at your turnover. Where is it coming from? What is the situation with bad bosses or good leaders? What are the leadership behaviors that are driving your organization? You have your values in your organization, but we know that some are the values that are in a beautiful frame in the reception, and some are the values that are discussed in the hallways that are sometimes very different. And understanding all these dynamics to see whether neuroscience and coaching and emotional intelligence are things that could help you in your leadership development efforts in your organization. So take advantage of it. That's the QR code, and I'm going to also put the link in the chat so you can copy from there, and it gives you access to the best day and time that you can have this conversation with me, and we can get together and chat about your organization. Now, I want you to just close today with this idea in your mind, which we open with, is the massive hidden cost that we review today, because that uncomfortable truth that every day managers are using language that is threatening, uh, behaviors that are threatening for people, and that the cost is immense. It's not always visible. Sometimes it's quiet quitters. Sometimes it's people leaving the organization, changing departments, performing in a lower level, but it's very real. It's disengagement, it's quiet quitting, it's the exit interviews that comes as a surprise. And the cost of inaction is much higher than the cost of change. So if these things are happening, and what I have found in my work over the last 16, 17 years is that it's happening all over the place. All organizations are having these problems. And the cost of inaction, we don't calculate it, but it's super high. It's another disengaged employee, another silent exit, another quiet quitter, another loss that could be prevented. So I really invite you to take action with some of the changes that we suggested today. So you people don't need better perks to be a better leader. They don't need another engagement survey to check the culture or the employee morale. What they need is better conversations, and better conversations start in the brain. So from bad boss to team builder doesn't happen overnight. It starts with awareness of these concepts. It starts with decisions to change language and behavior. It starts with changes and repetition. And it starts with one decision, which is to lead the brain, not the role, to lead in a way where we follow my definition of leadership. My definition of leadership, you know that leadership is like one of those things where we have as many definitions as experts in the field. But my personal leadership definition, and I think it's a very good one, is the art of creating results by developing new leaders. So I still have a management responsibility. I need to create results. I need to comply with the KPIs. I need to bring the things that the organization is expecting from me, but developing new leaders that do the work and execute in an engaged way, in a high performing way, and create the results that they want to create and that they are enjoying being at the job. I think that some leaders, many baby boomer leaders, fortunately are leaving the organizations, but many of them are the old leadership school that was like, you need to divide work and life, and you cannot show your emotions, and you cannot let them go over your authority. But we now know that all those things are not even possible. How I am not going to bring my home problems to my job? Of course I'm going to bring them. How I'm not going to take my job problems to my home? Of course I'm going to take them. I cannot split my brain. And that is happening. And what we need is to embrace that in a way that we work with people to create cultures where we have more enjoyment working and more engagement and better performance. So that's my invitation for you today with that. I want you also to provide some feedback on how useful is this and also to download the guide on how to implement Feed Forward. What you need to do is to scan this QR code, and also I'm going to copy the link in the chat. And with that, you are going to go to a small survey about the usefulness of the concepts today. How did you like my presentation? And at the end, you can download your feed forward implementation guide that we offer you. You just go to that link, and when you ask to give a code, write the word forward, and you will be able to fill the survey and then get your implementation guide. So this is what I have for you today. I think we have a few minutes for a Q&A or specific concerns if you have about the concepts. I know a couple of you got late here, but we talk about three important tools for improving leadership development, learning more about how the brain works from the neuroscience, new findings and concepts, the asking permission technique, and the use of feed forward. And those are some of the many concepts that we push in our leadership development programs and in the executive coaching that we do with leaders in organizations. So I'm going to stop sharing here, and you can open your mics and your cameras. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to try my best shot at an answer.
Guillermo, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Krista.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have any questions. That was super great and digestible and very practical for, just to utilize. Very easy to kind of those little baby steps for sure. So yeah, I don't really have any specific questions. So.
Excellent. I'm glad you like it.
Yes. Thank you.
Katie is asking here in the chat, thank you, Guillermo. You may have shared it, but I was curious if you have any book recommendation around the neuroscience of leadership. Yes, I have recommendations on that. One of the best resources that I have found is the Neuro Leadership Institute. The Neuro Leadership Institute was founded by David Rock. He's an Australian, he's in California, and he has wrote a couple of books that make very easy to understand neuroscience. And one that I recommend is called Your Brain at Work, and is sharing a story about a couple and how they react when they are not aware of how the brain works, and how they can deal with situations in a different way when they have knowledge of how the brain works. So that's a very good reading to start with neuroscience. Your Brain at Work. Let me put it here in the chat. And is by David Rock. Another good recommendation. You got me going with books. I have lots of recommendations on that. Another good one also from David Rock is called Quiet Leadership. And that is a book that mainly stresses two important techniques for leaders and for coaching. One of them is actually the asking permission technique, how to use that before conversations. And the other one is our consciousness of time, how like the important question to ask people to reflect on how much are you losing of productivity, minutes, hours, maybe sleep for not actioning and not solving something. And creating that reflection that creates more a sense of urgency that, yeah, I'm not sleeping well because I haven't solved this, or I am getting distracted every other minute, or I am losing hours every day thinking about the situation by not addressing things, which is a very common topic also when I coach leaders, the idea of conflict management and reframing conflict as a good thing, not as a bad thing, and how you handle conflict in organizations. So that's another one. And the last one I have for you, love this book. I recommend it to most of my clients. Is called What Got You Here Won't Get You There by Marshall Goldsmith. And this is a book that I love because it tells leaders Well, maybe the reason that you are the boss is not because you are the best. Maybe it's just it was just a coincidence of you being in the right place at the right time, knowing the right person, and now you got the position. But not necessarily because you are so good. So that's the first premise. And then the second premise is a lot of the behaviors that you are using in your management are not going to take you to the big leagues because we use behaviors that are good for getting results, but they are not good for developing people and becoming a high level leader. Quick example, as an individual contributor that is promoted to supervisor or a leadership position, my mindset as a manager and as an expert is that I need to provide solutions and correct people and help them do the work better. So when someone comes with a proposal in my team, it's going to be my tendency and my perfectionism, and I suffer from that a long time until I fix it after reading this book, is going to take me to say, okay, that looks great, but you know what? Use a lighter blue. That blue is very dark. Or I am going to say, you know what? That is great, but just add this sentence. Or, that is great, but create another spreadsheet with this and that. And that little contribution that I feel obliged to do because I am the boss is not really making a difference sometimes. And what it's doing is that I am depriving that person from the pride of this is my baby that I created for my boss. I brought it here for approval. And instead of saying, it's beautiful, you have a beautiful baby, the answer was, it's beautiful, but you know what? Maybe you need to tint the hair to have a different color in the hair. And now it's not my baby anymore because of my boss contribution. So that's one of the 20 behaviors that Marshall Goldsmith explains in that book, that as managers, we think that they are good and they are actually help to produce results, but they are not the best for high level leadership. Because in high level leadership, I need to learn to pick my battles and think, is my perfectionism, my team contribution as the key expert here going to really make a change with the light blue? Or can I let this go and say, great work, it looks great, go ahead, implement it. And that is going to feel better for the person, and that is going to develop more my people. So that's just an example of what you're going to find in that book. Um, in coaching, we also joke between coaches that there are people that are non-coachable. And that people, I think that everyone is coachable, but the people that we joke are non-coachable are the two extremes. Either people that play themselves as victims, like it's not my fault, or the people that have what I call a lack of self-reflection for insights, and they say, I don't know what to improve. That's why I am the VP. That is why I'm so good. My team is great. My results are great. I'm so good. I cannot come up with ideas on what to improve in my leadership. And when I have found clients in this part of the spectrum that I call them the perfect ones, I tell them, well, what about if you lead what got you here won't get me there? And maybe you find some ideas on that book that we can work on and we can discuss next session. And usually next session they come with, you were right, behavior 4, 11, and 14, I'm doing it wrong. I need to work on that. So it's a great book for that. Now, the other people that are playing the victim space, if you are hiring professional coaches that are good coaches, the first role that they have is to take that person out of that space and make the person responsible and accountable for the results. I had a funny story. I was coaching a leader one time that he said, I love the session. I love this methodology of finding my own answers and how coaching works. I love all this. But you know what would really help me? If you coach my boss. It was like saying, I am not the problem. The problem is the boss that I have. And that's people moving the responsibility to another part instead of holding themselves accountable. And professional coaches, when they find that situation that I call the non-coachables, the victims, they need to first move them to what I call the driver's seat. If you are in the co-pilot seat, you don't control anything. You don't control the route, the speed, the risk. You don't control anything. You need to be at the wheel. You need to decide what are your goals, what is your speed, what is your route, how are you doing it, and be in charge of what you want to create with your new version. So that's something that wanted to comment about the book because helps me with the perfect ones a lot. Thank you for that question, Katie. You got me going with the book recommendations. Any other questions? Any other thing that you want to comment on the content today? Well, this was recorded, so we are going to make the recording available if you want to review the concepts again, or for those of you that were not here at the beginning. And again, take advantage of, I hope you evaluate me and gave me some feedback on the presentation, but also take advantage of this QR code to have a meeting and discuss some potential ideas for leadership development in your organization. Thank you so much and see you next time.